You are listening to an Arc Media podcast.
So, Yonatan, what's your number this week?
My number is 5, as in $5 per interception. This is the cost of Israel's laser-based Iron Beam interception. Last week, the country declassified the system's first generation, which was successfully deployed operationally. Big news, $5 interceptions compared to $50,000 interceptions for Iron Dome. That's 4 orders of magnitude cheaper, and that introduces an entirely new interception economics. We're going to talk about all that later in the episode.
Okay, my number is 117. This is the number of drones that were reportedly used in Ukraine's recent Operation Spider's Web attack on Russia, which everybody is still talking about. This reportedly destroyed 40 Russian warplanes and caused $7 billion in damages. That's what's estimated. Not clear the extent of it quite yet. But this is really like a modern day Trojan horse story here, and I think really indicative of the changing nature of warfare. So whose number wins?
Somebody just wrote on Twitter that this is now the game of drones, what's going on between Ukraine and Russia. Also, the retaliation was heavy from Russia. It is a big number, but I would say my number wins. It's very consequential for Israel. It's very consequential for its economy and very consequential for our safety here. It is, as we'll hear later today, groundbreaking innovation. Although it's a small number, it is a very strong number.
I would have to agree. And I feel like you've been winning a lot lately, so don't let it go to your head. But you win. You got it.
All right.
Welcome to What's Your Number from Arc Media, where we focus on Israel's economy through a global lens. I'm Michal Lev-Ram.
And I'm Yonatan Adiri.
Yonatan, it is around 10:30 a.m. here in Palo Alto.
9:30 p.m. here in Tel Aviv.
Did you have a good Shavuot, by the way? I haven't seen you for a while.
I had a great Shavuot. Yesterday night, saw with my son 5.5 hours of Roland Garros finals.
Nice.
Sinner versus Alcaraz. I have to say I was a pro Sinner guy. Ended up losing after having 3 match points and losing them. So a lot of screams around the Adiri household here in Tel Aviv. But it is what it is.
Okay, and hopefully some cheesecake last week as well.
Yeah, the full experience.
Good. Okay, well, we've got a lot in store for today's episode. There has been no shortage of news, in both of our locations, I would say. Tons going on. On today's episode, we are calling it Jewish Space Lasers. Hopefully everybody gets the reference there. Thank you, Marjorie Taylor Greene, for giving us the inspiration. We're going to do today's long play, which is our deep dive into one critical issue that's impacting the Israeli economy, with Oded Ben David, who is the Chief Technology Officer at ELOP, or ELOP, the electro-optical division of Elbit Systems. This is our first guest on What's Your Number. We are super excited because Oded is going to be able to tell us all about Iron Beam, which Yonatan just mentioned. It's been described as a system that can cook rockets and drones at a low cost. I don't think that's the technical term, but we will find out more from Oded shortly. First, as usual, we'll take a look at some of this week's other pressing news, aka our big shorts, which include some key numbers that should be on your radar, like the WYNDEX. Stay with us. On to our big shorts. Let's kick things off with this week's What's Your Number Index, or WYNDEX. This is our very own index of Israeli-based and or Israeli-founded companies. And we now have 51 companies on the WYNDEX since eToro joined just a few weeks ago. So, Yonatan, how is the WYNDEX looking this week?
eToro joined on its bris, on its 8th day of trade, and joined our WYNDEX. And so welcome, eToro.
It's better than a pacifier dipped in wine, right?
Exactly.
You get to be on the WYNDEX.
This week was really incredible. The week of June 2nd to 7th for the WYNDEX. It's on fire. Our very own index rose 3.8%, outperforming both the S&P and NASDAQ. S&P by 2.04% and NASDAQ by 1.35%. Lots of Israeli companies in the green this week. The leading one is AI-driven insurtech pioneer Lemonade.com with a 19% increase in 1 week, completing 152% rise in the 12 trailing months. This is mainly due to continued performance of AI-driven clearing of issued claims. And this is a very strong capacity from the company. There was speculation in Wall Street. We spoke about that a couple episodes ago with regards to Fiverr.com and Wix, whether or not generative AI or the path towards generative AI is going to render some of these companies a bit less attractive to investors. Well, at least according to this week and the strong data coming from Lemonade, that's not the case.
Yeah, this is a really interesting company. Daniel Schreiber, one of the co-founders, has been around for a while, actually used to live here in Palo Alto with his family. But the sector is interesting. We've seen a lot of volatility in insurance. And by the way, speaking of volatility, Lemonade also sells to the California homeowners market, which has been really, really hit hard by the fires recently. A lot of the more traditional insurance companies have been pulling out of the state.
True, and Lemonade has fought some serious headwinds. Its top price was about 4 times what it is right now in market cap and share price. So still a long way to go, but it's quite a remarkable path over the last, I would say, 10 to 12 trailing months. We see it steadily going up and reclaiming its position. I would say in the red, very few Israeli companies in the red in New York this past week, but one of my favorite Israeli founded companies, medical device innovator NovoCure. I come from the medical AI innovation space. So these are some of the role models for the Israeli ecosystem. NovoCure is a 25-year-old company, remarkable medical device company that really changed the pathway of treating glioblastoma, that is brain cancer. Their device, Optune, has been around, a very innovative device, impacted the lives of many thousands and tens of thousands of patients suffering from this horrible disease. So last week was not a good week. The company lost 11% back to its kind of $2 billion-ish market cap, but still a company to look for, very strong technology. And really one of those cases make you proud of the choices Israeli entrepreneurs make in terms of the change they want to see in the world.
Do we have a sense of why they're down?
So I think, overall, the stock has been performing a bit in a volatile way recently because it is expanding its success in glioblastoma to other diseases, ailments, and other types of tumors. And so the market is trying to figure out the multiple, right? Is this a glioblastoma specifically company, or can this set of IP scale, broadly in oncology? I think that's why we're seeing the volatility. But I would say, again, for me, as with Lemonade, which was a pioneer in its own field with AI-driven insurtech, this is another pioneer, a hallmark of the Israeli, medical device and healthcare ecosystem. And yeah, it's a company to watch. The better the share does, the better the impact they do in the world.
Okay. Well, it sounds like the WYNDEX has had a good week overall, though. So that's a positive note there. Moving along on a less positive note here, Israel's Ministry of Finance recently cut growth projections from 4.3% to 3.6%. And this represents a 0.7% cut in projected economic growth for Israel in 2025. The explanation was, or at least part of the explanation was, the extended war and also U.S. tariffs. Both of these are realities that, we don't know where they end and when they end. So a lot of uncertainties. And, in light of that, I guess, how certain is this number? I mean, it could be better, but it could also be worse, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So look, another 1% was shaved off the projection for 2026 growth. So when you kind of add those numbers together, these are meaningful numbers. Remember, 1% of the Israeli GDP is order of magnitude $5.5 billion. So 1.7% gets you close to 10 billion, call it 9. This is a significant number. Just to give you a sense, it's the entirety of the Israeli transportation budget. So this is a big number. I think 2 things to remember here that affected us this week. One is a very important piece of the fog of war is what's called the GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Fund. It has been exposed that actually some of the funding going into the operation of the fund went from the Israeli Ministry of Finance to the tune of 700 million shekels. That's no small number, which has been exposed by the media last week. This is a very important leverage in the war, showing to the world that a U.S.-driven, in partnership with Israel, non-UN system can deliver aid in Gaza. This may end up being a bit expensive and may have actually, burdened the economy a bit. But overall, if it works and it works well, this would actually mean that the odds of peace and the sort of next day in Gaza are coming closer. I think the last point to make here, which got me really pissed off, is the dishonesty of the Ministry of Finance. That's not the way you build trust, not with the Israeli public, and neither with the ranking agencies. The figure that came out on Thursday night. So remember, Israel doesn't work on Friday. Thursday night, Shavuot evening over a long weekend. That's how you bury bad news. Came in 1 a.m. between Thursday and Friday, and it came at the foothills of Minister Smotrich saying the day before, we're going to release very good macro data, right? So 48 hours before he knew what the data is. So, it's okay. We're fighting a war. We're making efforts to change the humanitarian system and methodology of delivery. These are important pieces. The Israeli public can sustain that. The growth figures can sustain that, but at least let's be honest about that.
Yeah, this is it's a kind of a double blow in that sense to people and to companies. Trust is it's a huge issue.
A rare commodity.
A rare commodity these days for sure. Okay, well, on the GHF side, I think there's a lot more for us to dive into because it is an economic issue, especially in light of some of these newer revelations, I guess. So more to be said there on a future episode. But let's move along. There's so much to get to. Just real quick, we recently found out that eBay is shutting down its R&D center in Netanya, and this is going to affect more than 200 workers in the country. This follows just last month in early May, General Motors' decision to lay off hundreds of workers. And this was linked to the closure of Cruise, the automaker's autonomous vehicle subsidiary. So, both eBay and GM are facing some really key, unique challenges in both of their industries. And the Cruise shutdown, by the way, impacted workers outside of Israel as well. eBay's been challenged. Its growth has really stalled over the last few years. So I think, the question here is obviously not good economic news when you've got layoffs, especially in the innovation and tech sector, which is so hugely important to the Israeli economy. On the other hand, is this a pattern? Is this a trend? If these are two companies, major companies, albeit, but two companies that are challenged. What do you think, Yonatan?
So I think mixed signals, I would say a bit more of noise than signal here, because, I'll just give you a couple more signals that came in on the other end, which are, I think, more prominent and more significant. NVIDIA just decided to double its real estate in Israel, anticipating expanding growth on the site. Nova measurements, which performed really well over the last few weeks in trading in New York, is also enjoying its unique position in the silicon space and growing. We have seen, an order of magnitude $200 million raised over in 10 days with the big Series C by Israeli company Empathy. So funding continues to flow. The big giants continue to expand. And I think you're right. I think, both eBay and GM have their own specific kind of restructuring and challenges. We got to keep an eye on that because clearly at the end of the day, the 400,000, kind of 10% of the workforce of the Israelis that operate and work in and around the innovation economy are indeed the major barometer to sort of where the next 3 to 5 years are going to be and how the economy recovers from the war. So I think you're right to kind of point out to those. To me, it's a bit more noise and signal right now, but we're going to keep an eye on that.
Okay, speaking of some of the mixed signals that we're seeing, during the war, Lufthansa has said that they will gradually restart flights in and out of Tel Aviv on June 23rd. They paused flights again after the strike near Ben Gurion Airport by a Houthi missile. This is still a huge issue. I know we've kind of celebrated the return of Ryanair, which, by the way, has been delayed again. There have been so many issues here, so many kind of false starts. This has huge impact. It's tourism, it's business travel, it's you name it. And speaking of trust, this doesn't bode well for that, right? And we need it. What are you reading into this?
So I think I'll give you a bifocal view, right? So on one end, on a personal side, a couple of weeks ago, I had to come back from New York. My flight got canceled. I had to fly through Abu Dhabi to go back to Israel. A lot of discomfort this week.
That seems inefficient.
Yeah, next week I'm flying again to Washington and New York, again through kind of spiraling in and out. So on the personal side, and also for many Israelis, summer vacations have been canceled, EasyJet postponed, and so on and so forth. But from a macro perspective, today, as we speak, in the next few hours, President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu are going to have a conversation after the Iranian response to the American proposal for the negotiations. This is still weighing heavily on the dynamic, that and the Houthis. And so historically speaking, from a kind of broader perspective, the fact that the market is growing this year by 3.4%, as we still pursue war that's been going on for almost 20 months right now, with Hezbollah practically gone, Lebanon rebuilding in ways that nobody could have imagined, in the last 30 years, with a bright, positive future. Syria starting to get its act together. We saw Trump in the Middle East. I think these dynamics overall, the fact that we can't fly whenever we want and in a cheap way kind of just makes me feel a bit bad, in the sense that I think of my father fighting, 6-day war in Yom Kippur, and complete shutdown. The market didn't operate. And, so to me, on a personal note, of course, this is meaningful and it is debilitating for the economy. But on the other hand, kind of when you take the bird's eye view, the next 6 to 8 weeks, depending on where Iran-US negotiations land and so on, may flights be the problem we deal with over the next 6 to 8 weeks. And let's see where it ends.
Yeah, I would say I'm probably a bit more worried about this than you are, Yonatan. I just think from an American perspective here, you look at flights and it's one thing if you have family in Israel, if you're visiting for personal reasons, but if you're a venture capitalist who's thinking about going, you're not going to go. You don't want to risk getting stuck, flight cancellations, all this mess. And I think the uncertainty, just like we're seeing in other aspects of the economy, it's debilitating. So hopefully things get better, not worse.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't belittle it. I think it's a big deal, but kind of in a greater scheme of things, I think that's sort of like a contained issue in the next 6 to 8 weeks vis-a-vis the Iran negotiations are going to determine where this goes.
All right, let's get to our long play. This is our deep dive into one significant issue that's impacting the Israeli economy. And today's long play is on Israel's Iron Beam system. We get to hear from Mr. Laser Beam himself. Can I call him that? Oded Ben David. He is the Chief Technology Officer at ELOP, ELOP, the electro-optical division of Elbit Systems. And Oded is our first guest on What's Your Number? Oded, welcome to What's Your Number? Thank you for being here. First question for you is just, what's your number? Did you bring a number to share?
Yes. So my number is a very small number. It's 0.0000002. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah,
now,
representing what?
There's a story behind this number. It's a very important number, basically. You know that every piece of optics in the world has an anti-reflective coating on it. Like if you have glasses, you have anti-reflective coating on it. And you know that these coatings absorb something like 0.1% of the energy penetrating them. Now think about a laser, high power laser, a big 100 kilowatt laser going through this optics. You know what will happen? It will explode very, very, very quickly. So when you're in the world of high power lasers, you need optics with very, very special anti-reflective coating that has absorption of only 0.0000002 or 1, like 2 parts per million. So your optics does not explode and can work with those huge lasers. So that's the number.
I already learned something new. I did not know that. And I'm looking forward to learning a lot more from you. But I think first thing, just to kind of give listeners a bit of context, can you share some of the highlights of your background and your current role? What do we need to know? How'd you get into lasers?
I'm a Talpiot graduate in Israel. So obviously I served in the army. doing some R&D, and I was doing work on lasers for many, many years. I'm a physicist, so I learned physics in the Hebrew University in the Weizmann Institute of Science, and I love lasers, and I deal with lasers for more than 30 years.
Oded, by the way, just to give you a sense, talpiot is probably 0.0001% of the Israelis. That's what talpiot means. I think 20 out of every 200,000 every year, right? Something like that. So there's a 0.00 something behind Oded as well.
So Oded, can you walk us through, for people who are more familiar with like the use of lasers to point at things or maybe for LASIK surgery, but not really beyond that, how does this system actually work?
So when I was a kid, I used to take a magnifying glass, take the sun and concentrate it on a piece of wood and burn this piece of wood and really burn it, because I could concentrate the sun to a very, very little spot. So this is basically what we're doing. We're bringing energy in form of light. These are photons of light. And the trick is how to bring them to a very, very small spot on the target and just create the damage and burn it. Now, it's not so easy. You need to build a laser with many, many wattages. And when you build the systems like that, you need to pinpoint your laser very, very accurately at the target in a very precise way. Now, this works very quickly because it's light. The light moves miraculously at the speed of light, 300,000 kilometers per hour. There's no ballistics here. You don't need wait for a missile to go. It's light. So reaches the target instantly. And another thing that we have to overcome is our main nemesis, the atmosphere. When you look with your eyes in a very hot day on a road, you will see the air is kind of blurry. It's not focused. So same thing happens to laser. It's called turbulence. This is affecting also the laser. So one of the things those systems are doing is also correcting the atmosphere, sensing the atmosphere and correcting for it. By the way, same thing is done in astronomy. When you look at big telescopes into the star, you see that the stars are glittering. Same reason, turbulence. They do the same thing in astronomical big telescopes. They do the correction of the atmosphere to let the light move more smoothly in.
So can you talk us through an actual scenario here? Let's say there's an aerial threat that's detected. What happens next?
So those systems usually have very, very strong observation channels of different kinds. So they look at the target. Somebody is telling them a target is here. They look at this target in a very, very good piece of optics, and then they track it. Because the target is moving. It's a missile, it's a UAV, it's whatever, it's moving. So we need to track this target very accurately and then fire our laser at this target and cause the damage and cause the target to fall and to go away.
A couple of weeks ago, or in our last episode, before the declassification of the operational piece of the Israeli laser, we highlighted Elbit's capital raise in New York and kind of gave a broad overview of the Israeli defense tech space and why that part of the industry is poised for growth. Take us back to 2008. I was then a CTO to the president. There was quite a battle between Iron Dome and the laser of 2008. There was a lot of pressure. The system was called Nautilus at the time. And there was quite a battle of titans where Daniel Gold, who ended up developing Iron Dome, advocated for this system. Take us back to sort of why back then laser was inferior. If you think the choice was the right choice back then, I think kind of in hindsight it was. And when does this shift happen throughout the 20-year, more or less, track that gets us to where we are today?
So it's a very good question. Why does it happen now? And why didn't it happen, 20 years ago? I think there is a reason for that. Nautilus was based on a chemical laser. This is quite a difficult laser, a chemical laser, quite dangerous, quite difficult to scale it up. And the fact that we are discussing high-power lasers today and that high-power lasers are now getting operational, very soon is the technology related to optical fiber lasers. Now, everybody are familiar with optical fibers. They bring the internet into our home. These are very thin communication fibers. We're looking at thicker fibers that have the lasing material inside them. And they allow us to build lasers which are built like a Lego. They're built from basic building blocks. Each one of them, we call them amplifiers in the professional language, is outputting like more than 1 kilowatt, more than 1,000 watts. And then you can stack them together, add 10, 20, 30, 100, and combine all this power together to get the wattage that we need in order to intercept all those UAVs and cruise missiles, etc., that are coming to attack us. So this is the technological thing that caused this to happen now. These lasers are easier to build. They are more reliable. They can withstand what we call mil-spec, the environmental conditions. We're not in the factory. The laser is not sitting in a factory with an air condition, without any vibrations, without any shocks. Because, there's so many lasers in factories. When you build a car today, you cut the metal with a laser, but conditions there are fixed. In our case, you need this to survive the environmental conditions of a military device. And today, we can do it. And this is one of the special things that we know how to do very well in Elbit Systems, is how to build lasers like that so they will be robust and will survive the mil-spec environment and will do the job.
So, Oded, I think many people try to understand where is this going. There's a big kind of, fake thinking that now it's all done. Israel's safe. It has lasers everywhere, and we shouldn't worry. Whereas, in effect, the system has its limitation. And what's the limitation that you see for the system?
Well, first of all, the limitations come from the performance of the system itself, how much power you have, how accurate you track the target, how well you deal with the atmosphere, and the objective conditions. If there are many clouds, if there's a lot of dust, if the atmospheric conditions are very bad, this is a limitation. By the way, this is one of the reasons why we in Elbit believe that the best solution would be to do the same thing from the air. Yep. Airborne, above the clouds, above the skies, then you enjoy a much preferable atmosphere, much less interference.
That's not an entirely new concept. Weren't there attempts to do this, to have this kind of system on aircraft in the past?
There was a program of the Air Force Research Labs like 20 years ago, a big one, on a 747, a huge system that they built. And we also demonstrated, like 4 years ago, air-to-air interception with a prototype that we built in Elbit, and we showed that we could shoot down UAVs from the air and enjoy the benefits of going to the air. Now, obviously, when you're on an aircraft, you're much more flexible from the operational point of view, because, in our case, the threat might come from the east, from Iran. It will go to Israel, so you can go and shoot them before they get above our heads, shoot them far away from here. You're much more flexible. You can get with your airplane or aircraft to the scene and intercept them before they reach you. So these are some of the big benefits of the airborne configuration.
So why Israel, Oded? Why not Russia? Why not China? As far as we know, maybe it is a breakthrough in China and they're not sharing, but sort of just your perspective on that. And again, I think the dynamics here at What's Your Number are also related to economics. We're going from $50,000 to $100,000 Tamir interceptors into what, $5-7 per interception, depending on cost of energy and deployment, right?
There are a few issues here. First, it's the necessity. Everybody and all the people in our teams that went to the safe room dozens of times in the last year and a half with their kids. Okay, I was giving a bath to my granddaughter a week ago, and in the middle I had to take her with a towel and go to the safe room. So you don't need to explain motivation on
and
this
you're in
to our
your
teams.
You're in your safe room right now. Sorry to interrupt you, but
Yes.
just to point out, and there was a siren just a few minutes before you hopped on with us, right?
Luckily, this ballistic missile fell on the way, so we didn't have the siren here. But I'm in the safe room now. So you really don't need to explain the motivation to our very professional teams. They are very highly motivated. They feel it on a daily basis when you hear their sirens and you understand that we need this. And we need this as soon as possible. It's one word, focus. We are very focused on it because we understand the necessity. You know that on April 14th, you can read about it, that the state of Israel spent like more than $1 billion on intercepting the Iranian attack on Israel. So from the economical point of view, you can see that the kinetic interceptors are doing an amazing job, really. They defend us and we thank them every day. But from the economical point of view, you must go to something which is based on energy, because then the cost of interception is a few dollars. True, it's not easy and not cheap. It's quite expensive to develop the systems and to procure those systems. But once you have them, the cost of interception is negligible. And this is a huge, huge benefit. And the necessity plus the economical effect, this is what makes us so highly motivated to progress as much as we can. And we get a lot of push from our ministry, from our customers, the Ministry of Defense, who are helping us and pushing us and want us to go as fast as possible and to succeed as fast as possible. And they are very good partners, helping us quite significantly.
I remember back in the day, in 2008, when Iron Dome was even more expensive, somebody made a comment, imagine a day where interceptions would go for the Mercedes price tag to an espresso price tag. And this is really what happened. I mean, it's incredible to see. In 15 years, we went from a Mercedes cost per interception, and we've had thousands of those, to a double espresso cost of an interception. And those are unique interception economics. And really, I think, also to kind of say thanks to you, to ELOP, to the team. I mean, this is, when I was in this field, like, this was science fiction, and now it is more science than it is fiction. It is a remarkable scientific achievement. Going airborne would be an incredible feat of the next generation, but going from Mercedes price tags to an espresso price tags, it's absolutely incredible. So from a bird's eye view, before we conclude, it's exciting to see a company the size and heritage of Elbit, right, in conjunction with Rafael. These are not startup companies that kind of just think outside the box. Not easy culturally. You mentioned focus and motivation as being, primary causes for Israel's breakthroughs in this space. Can you share just a bit on culture? Like, why is it that, what is it in the culture at ELOP, at Elbit, at Rafael, at your partners that gets the cycles to work?
Well, first of all, I always tell my engineers and my physicists that we are 100 startups together, because we are.
Yep.
As a big company, it's right. We're not a startup. We're a big company with all the bureaucracy of a big company, of course, but we have many, many amazing technologically programs and projects. And we do really the state-of-the-art technology in many fields. And you have all this huge infrastructure behind you that you don't have as a startup that can help you do everything. We know how to manufacture and design optics, coatings, mechanics, electronics. Whatever you want, you have in this, I call it the Disneyland of ELOP. You have everything you need in electro-optics within reach. This is when you're a professional and you want to work and create and build new things, this is an amazing environment to do that. It enables you to do many things very quickly and very efficiently.
Oded, how critical or integral, I guess, is this? We actually kicked off the episode talking about the changing nature of warfare. We mentioned this very innovative drone attack by Ukraine against Russia. So I guess the question is, how big of a role do lasers play in this new evolving way of war?
So you see that today to build all those threats is very, very easy and cheap. An FPV quadcopter is around $400 to $500 to build one when you build a few thousands. So the threats are very, very accurate and very cheap. And the volumes are huge. So we need something that can deal with those volumes and deal with those threats in a reasonable, economical way. And I think that energy systems like high-power laser is one of the best answers for this threat, which is growing and growing all around the world, as we see.
It's actually pretty remarkable what you're talking about here. And again, what we saw with Ukraine is it's low-cost threats and low-cost defense systems basically starting to take root. Is that accurate?
Exactly. So we need something that gives you a very low cost of interception to get into the equation. This is essential to deal with the volumes of threats. And
just maybe a technical piece here. You need more than one interceptor to deal with a swarm, or sort of a swarm of drones can be addressed with a single interceptor, or, we don't have to cover that if it's a sensitive question.
No, the people are doing all the calculations, what is needed. It depends on how much time you spend on each target, etc. These are specifications that are dealt with.
Oded, last question for you. Was there a moment you can point to where you knew that this was working, that you could operationalize this, that you'd kind of crossed some threshold? And is there something you can share with us?
I think that the test we did in 2021, when we shot the first UAV from the air, was really a touching moment. I mean, we were all highly excited. We worked quite a lot on this, and it was quite remarkable to see this UAV burnt and diving down. This was a moment for me of a lot of excitement and enthusiasm about the technology, that the technology works.
Thank you so much, Oded. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
That was great. I learned a lot, but I think it all comes down to the fact that at the end of the day, the fundamental code of Startup Nation, as we call it, or the essence of innovation during war, is captured by the fact that he was there with his daughter in the safe room, knowing that him and his team have to deliver, which really makes Israel first to beat the target. And, just kind of think through the $100,000 interception to a $5 interception. Think of your car that you bought 10 years ago, being worth now $5. That's just hard to imagine.
I think obviously necessity is a mother of invention. We are seeing that over and over. And by the way, it's also leading to great returns for the company. It's not that common for a company that's been around as long as Elbit, as entrenched as it's been, to see the kind of stock performance that we're seeing from them. It's up more than 60% since the start of the year. They recently hit an all-time high stock price wise. And so, that's really remarkable as well, and just goes to show that, you can teach an old dog new tricks, and especially so when there's so much at stake, like you said, Yonatan.
It's true for the big ones, but imagine how many startups are being brewed right now, right? Within the sort of lessons learned from what we've been through over the last year and a half. And we're going to see, in episode 100 of What's Your Number, when we're going to talk about, capital raised for those startups who left those teams to build their own vision. It's just the beginning.
Well, we began our show with the numbers of the week, and we're going to end with the words of the week as usual. And this week, we've got a posting, a social media posting from President Donald Trump. I cannot believe we got through the entire episode without mentioning the Musk and Trump meltdown. But here it is. And there is a connection to what we've been talking about. So the easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. Now, the connection here, of course, is Golden Dome. And Yonatan, as we know, there's a lot at stake here. And whether you love or hate Elon Musk, SpaceX plays a critical role here. So who knows what happens next? There are a lot of words being thrown out right now. It's really hard to tell what will actually happen going forward.
Yeah, look, in this game also of brands, if Israel has Iron Dome, then better would be Golden Dome. The question is, if you have Iron Beam, right, speed of light, how do you beat that? So I'm curious to see, which competitor comes on the global stage beating the speed of light for an interception system at $5 an interception.
All right, that is it for today's show. Thank you for tuning in to ARC Media's What's Your Number? We hope you found it interesting. And if you did, be sure to like, subscribe, rate, review. You know the drill. But most importantly, please share it with others who you think will find it interesting. If you want to make suggestions or share your feedback, please reach out to us at whatsyournumber@arcmedia.org.
What's Your Number is produced by Ilan Ben-Attar and edited by Michal Lev-Ram. Sound and video editing is by Martin Huergo. Our theme music is by Midnight Generation. I'm Yonatan Adiri.
And I'm Michal Lev-Ram. See you back here next week.
We'll see you next week.
This podcast offers general business and economic information and is not a comprehensive summary for investment decisions. It does not recommend or solicit any investment strategy or security.